remember eventually in this interaction, he shoves me up against the fridge. He has me by the throat, and he just was holding me there by my throat. And I wondered if it was the drugs. I wondered if it was him. It hadn't, in my recollection, it hadn't been that long. He has me up against the throat. He's kind of bashing me against the wall next to the fridge. We're kind of moving in that area. And at some point, I'm in his face. And I don't know if he had let go of my neck or loosened my grip, but I remember slapping him across the face, screaming at him. He's screaming at me. I got my hand free when he tried to grab me when I walked off. I stormed off. I slammed the door upstairs. I don't know if it was in that instance or if it was in a later one that I eventually barricaded the door. You know, it wouldn't stop him from coming in. He could come in the other doors. You know, there's a back door, there's patio, but at least I'd hear it. And this is March 2015. By this time, I'm being medicated by his doctor. He's giving me anti-anxiety meds, giving me, you know, had already tried to give me antidepressants. They didn't work for obvious reasons, I hope. I wasn't sleeping. I had insomnia. I'd wake up with panic attacks. I needed to sleep, but my ability to do so was really, really compromised at this point. And I kept thinking that I just wanted to hear him or know if he came in so I could be aware, so I could be ready for what was going to come in with him. And at some point I go back downstairs. I don't really know at what point I gave up and stayed behind my barricaded door, but I managed to go to sleep. I took some sleeping pills.
Yeah, tenses are all over the shop now, as far as I'm concerned. Shoves, has, holding, wondered, has, bashing, just all over the place. But at some moment, I'm up in his face. Well, okay, at some moment, there's all this stuff going on. Then at some moment, well, I want to know, like, how are you up in his face? How did that happen? I remember slapping him. Okay, so we do have some remembrance of that. Stormed off, slammed the door. Well, that's aggressive, not protective, I would say. If I were worried about myself, I wouldn't be storming off and slamming doors. I would be running away and locking myself somewhere, maybe quietly. I would be more silent, more, I no, that's just me. It's not her. So you know, I'm worried about that. I don't know if I eventually barricaded. Okay, so eventually you might have. So what happened before, if you eventually did, like what happened before all of that eventuality? And by the way, if you don't know, is it possible that none of it happened? Well, that's my worry about this, because in cross, I mean, that's a disaster for cross-examination, because it's just all over the shop. And so some of what we're hearing there does make some kind of sense, not particularly in this one. I mean, we may have heard some stuff before that had some kind of sense to it, but this stuff under cross-examination, I don't think is going to go very, very well, and there might be a good reason why it's not going to go well. Scott, what do you think?
All right. She's displaying tons of facial cues, lots of things that she should be doing. Anger, disgust, contempt, worry, frustration, you name it, and it's in this clip. I'm under the impression a lot of it is truthful. For example, when she says she barricaded the door, I think maybe she locked the door. But I think she's adding all these things onto it, and that's why it seems and feels like we were talking about earlier. That's why some people watching this are going to say, this just doesn't seem right. I know it looks right or something, but I don't know what it is. I'm not sure what it is, but something's just not right here. I think that's what it is. Her cadence is a little bit faster. Her tone is high, and it's kind of restricted. And her gestures and illustrators land right where they should for the emotions she's displaying in this case. lots of micro expressions and flat out full on expressions of the emotions we should be seeing. But I think she's not being as dramatic as she should be, I think, as she is in these other ones. If somebody's doing all this, if all this is happening, you say, I barricaded the door. I'd say it twice. I locked the door. I had to put stuff in front of it, man. I had to barricade the door. I'd talk about putting stuff in front of it. What did she barricade the door with? I mean, that's what I had to push the dang dresser in front of the door to make sure it didn't stay. And I wouldn't be going to sleep. If I had to barricade the door, I wouldn't be going to sleep. Then she's not sure he can't get in through somewhere else, but she's barricading the door. Why didn't she go out through one of those other exits? It makes no sense to me. Makes no sense at all. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, if you're worried about your personal safety on the Maslow's pyramid, you're not worried about anything else above it. That's priority number one. I think, Scott, exactly what you were saying. I had the same thought this morning, writing down these things in my notes. Barricading versus locking a door is an extremely adding on these details that never happened. And this speaks to the diagnosis that she received of histrionic personality disorder. And if you're on anti-anxiety, antidepressant medications, and you're mixing that with a lot of cocaine or grapefruit, believe it or not, grapefruit is horrible to combine with a lot of those medications. Yeah, you're going to have panic attacks. You're going to wake up at night, and you're going to need to take a couple of sleeping pills and maybe a bottle of Malbec, as she calls it. And all her internal thoughts are crystal clear in her memory. Every single thought that she's ever processed, it's almost, I'm exaggerating a small bit here, but it's like she could recall the thread count of the living room rug, but doesn't know whether or not there was a fight. And she's saying, in my recollection, it hadn't been that long, back to present tense. There's throat up against the fridge. I remember slapping him across the face. Now there's that term again. I remember, which she used in her testimony 187 times. And then she's back to past tense recall. I didn't count that myself, but Sadie actually counted that. The Prime Minister of Behavior. Sadie, we love you. Shows a lot of disgust for this doctor. She's saying, I'm being medicated as if it's against her will. And she kind of glances over at the jury to kind of just say, yeah, I'm getting medicated by this person. And she wants you to see this helpless person. Of course, she willingly took these medications. The entire final 30 seconds of this video is horrible, in my opinion. There's shifting artificial emotional expressions on the face every few seconds that I have never seen. This rapid thing Scott was just talking about a few minutes ago, this rapid shift of facial expressions. And then there's unusual recall with this deliberate adding of very specific details just exactly to feed a narrative. And there's force feeding of that same narrative of the helpless and perfect victim. I'm willing to bet, in my opinion, she got some legal advice that, honey, you need to go all the way on this. You need to go 300% what you think you could. And if you're worried about perjury, all of this is going to be extremely hard to prove. No one's going to be able to prove it in the opposite direction. And I think maybe she was given some bad advice, because this is going to be horrible, I think, if Depp has competent counsel during the cross-examination. That's all I got. Greg?
Yeah, the cross-examination on this is going to be brutal, in my opinion. Number one, because they've had all of this that she's putting out, just like you said, Chase. The more details you put out, the more there is to your story and the easier it is to attack. Number two, they get a week of watching game tape before they come back in. This is going to be brutal, in my opinion. But here, word stress matters. I agree with everything you guys have said. I'm going to add a few little nuances. Word stress matters. When a person stresses a word, in my old world, we would call that a source lead. When somebody said something, I go, they said something for a reason. She says, he shoves me. He shoves me. That usually indicates there's been something happened before. When you say me and you emphasize me, there's probably been a little shoving back and forth. My guess is that's how all these things got to where they got. She feels prepared, and she's editing as she's speaking. When she says, he has me up against the throat, this sounds like Ravnsburg's mantra, dash, steering wheel, phone, whatever, his little thing. She's doing the same thing. And then she gets out of sequence and she says, now, he had me up against the wall, then it was the fridge, and then she says, well, it was that area. We were moving in that area. That's excessive. Hey, the guy slammed me against the wall, had me by the throat. I don't need to hear that he moved you from the couch to this to that. Again, more details. He let go of my grip. Does she mean he let go of his grip? Again, words are coming apart. We know that happens when a person's getting a little disjointed and they're walking through. Then she goes to the reason why all this is happening. He was medicating me for obvious reasons. I hope I don't really understand what that means. You should be able to tell I'm sane, I think is what that means. Here's the last thing I'll leave you with. There is a almost 100% guarantee that if you have PTSD, one of the traits you'll have is hypervigilance. And that means that you're always concerned. You're always feeling on edge. You're always having all that problem. I've never known a person who had PTSD who would want to take sleeping pills and sleep near the imminent threat that caused them to be there to start with. Just, I don't see it. So we're on the same page there. That's it.
You nailed it. Yeah.
I remember eventually in this interaction, he shoves me up against the fridge. He has me by the throat, and he just was holding me there by my throat. And I wondered if it was the drugs. I wondered if it was him. It hadn't, in my recollection, it hadn't been that long. He has me up against the throat, just kind of bashing me against the wall next to the fridge. We're kind of moving in that area. And at some point, I'm in his face. And I don't know if he had let go of my neck or loosened my grip, but I remember slapping him across the face, screaming at him. He's screaming at me. I got my hand free when he tried to grab me when I walked off. I stormed off. I slammed the door upstairs. I don't know if it was in that instance or if it was in a later one that I eventually barricaded the door. You know, it wouldn't stop him from coming in. He could come in the other doors. You know, there's a back door, there's patio, but at least I'd hear it. And this is March 2015. By this time, I'm being medicated by his doctor. He's giving me anti-anxiety meds, giving me, had already tried to give me antidepressants. They didn't work for obvious reasons, I hope. I wasn't sleeping. I had insomnia. I'd wake up with panic attacks. I needed to sleep, but my ability to do so was really, really compromised at this point. And I kept thinking that I just wanted to hear him or know if he came in so I could be aware, so I could be ready for what was going to come in with him. And at some point I go back downstairs. I don't really know at what point I gave up and stayed behind my barricaded door, but I managed to go to sleep. I took some sleeping pills.
If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.